Hey Herd Watchers, it's a great day, so I pulled out a DSLR and came out to talk to you guys here. I'm not in my car, you'll have to pardon the shadow and a little bit of wind noise. I'm recording on two sources, so I should be able to get you guys some clean audio, or sort of regardless of how it goes. I had recorded a couple minutes of this, but I had to go kill a wind chime. In any case, what I want to talk to you guys about is sort of some of the feeling of concern sweeping through the Trump nation or the Trump train in its own way. And look, we're not the left, right? Dissent was common during our primaries. Dissent was common as we selected Donald Trump. It will be common as we move forward from here. We are not in lockstep. We're a coalition, not a pile of ideologues. So we have a wide variation in how we feel about a wide variety of topics, and so I'm not concerned with the internal infighting and dissent and argument. That's one of the things that attracts me to the right. No, what I want you to do is, as always on this blog, we talk about media techniques, and I want you to be aware of the techniques that are at play here. Now, the media and the left have spent a year and change on one tactic. They believe that they could shut down Donald Trump and his policies and his support. They believe that they could do all that by basically painting him as too extreme, right? So Donald Trump, way too far out in the field for the mainstream, and he's too crazy and too extreme, and nobody should vote for him. And that didn't work because he's not extreme or crazy. He's dealing with ideas that are a little bit to the hard right, but they're moderate right. And that didn't work. But you didn't really think that the media was not going to ever learn or ever change tack. No. What they figured out is that they can attempt to they can manipulate many Trump supporters with doing the opposite. They can concern troll us. Now the narrative is not that Donald Trump is too extreme. It's that Donald Trump isn't extreme enough. Oh, how does the Donald Trump base feel about him betraying them on this, that, and the other thing? And then they proceed to do what they've always done. Build straw man arguments around things that Trump never said, and then claim that those are true. And whereas they used to use those claims that those things are true to portray him as extreme, now they're going to use those things as if they were true, and now his somewhat more reasonable position, that was always the position, will now be seen as backpedaling or weakening or pulling back. And I don't know why some of you are buying into that. Again, I'm willing to have the debates. I'm happy to have the argument and the discussion. If I keep raising this phone, it's just so I have audio when I feel the wind coming up. I welcome your discussion and your well-reasoned thoughts. It's the panic I don't understand. And we can take a couple of examples of this. I have this morning seen people on social media complaining that Donald Trump has backpedaled on NATO and softened on NATO, and they apparently believe that somewhere along the line Donald Trump was going to disband NATO or pull the United States from these NATO treaty obligations. And he never said any such thing. He never promised any such thing. And it was never reasonable to believe that Donald J. Trump was going to pull the United States out of the most useful alliance for democratic protection in the last century. That he was actually going to do that. Who among you thought that that was the idea? And it was never what he promised. It was never what he said. What Donald Trump said was that NATO was, as it was currently operating at the time, obsolete in its tactics and in its policies, and it was not paying its way, that the member nations were not contributing the way that they should. And that was it. That was as far as he went. He never said we're going to disband it. He never said we're definitely pulling out. What he said is we would have to look at our options and whether remaining in NATO made sense. That is a bargaining position. This is Donald J. Trump. Wrote a book called The Art of the Deal, which apparently many of you have never read. Anyway, that was his position. Now, since that time, Donald Trump has been elected to the United States government. Le Pen may actually win France. Probably not, but it's a possibility. Britain has triggered Brexit. In other words, three pillars of the sort of Western military power bloc are suddenly shifting away from globalism and more towards their own national interests. Suddenly, the NATO alliance makes much more sense than it did before. If he's gotten concessions with respect to the funding, then NATO is in a much stronger position for relevancy than it was before. And of course, Donald Trump's comments are going to reflect that. And that's always going to be true. He's not an inflexible person. Today, as long as NATO is playing ball the way he wants to, then NATO isn't as obsolete as it was before, maybe. And that's the phrase, maybe NATO isn't obsolete. Putting them on warning. They can be obsolete again in a heartbeat. You got to keep playing ball, and he'll keep playing ball with you. Is that a shock to any of you? How is that a shock to anyone? China. China was and is manipulating currency. China was and is a hostile trading partner. But what did you think was going to happen? Do you think that Donald Trump was going to come into office, destroy our trading relationship with China childishly, cut off a huge percentage of our economy, tell the Chinese to go screw themselves, and walk away from that huge budding Asian market? Did you think that was going to happen? Because he never said that was going to happen. What's happened is exactly what we expected. Donald Trump put China on notice about being currency manipulators. Donald Trump put them on notice about how they deal with North Korea. Donald Trump put them on notice that they cannot act the way they have been acting towards us. He had a great meeting. During that meeting, he attacked Syria. During that meeting, he put the Chinese on notice that we will take unilateral action with North Korea. And what's the end result? China finally enforcing their law regarding North Korean coal, turning coal away at the ports, North Korea softening their support for North Korea in its entirety. I'm sure we will see changes in trade status. I'm sure we will see more favorable treaty treatment, and our tensions with China have eased dramatically. In other words, we got what we want strategically, we got what we want militarily, we got what we want politically, we're getting what we want, a good portion of what we want economically from China, and we retain access to that huge market. And all it cost was not declaring China a legal currency manipulator and triggering an enormous number of sanctions. That was always a bargaining position and a threat. Wind. It was always a bargaining position and a threat, and you guys are panicking because a bargaining position was used as a lever. Did you think that that was never going to change? Look in my eyes. Were you really buying into the Wall Street Journal and all the rest of that crap? And we can see the same thing down the line. Donald Trump warns people what's going to happen. Donald Trump gets his concessions. Donald Trump softens his stance. This is true. This has always been true. You only feel betrayed if you believed he promised you, literally promised you something. Donald Trump made a couple of promises. The wall is one of them. We're going to get a wall. Mexico is going to pay for the wall. This is another thing that people are freaking out about. Oh, he said Mexico was going to pay for the wall, and now the Wall Street Journal is telling me that we're going to pay for the wall. Were you not listening to the speeches? We were always going to build the wall. Mexico was never going to pay for that wall ahead of time. It was always going to be trade sanctions. It was always going to be confiscating cartel money. It was always going to be some sort of trade negotiation. It was never going to be cash table. Mexico was never going to be handing piles of money to people delivering concrete. It was never going to happen. It was never the way it was intended to happen. It was never what he said was going to happen. And now you're panicking because the New York Times is telling you that Donald Trump is turning his back on a promise he never made. You didn't believe them about what he was saying when they were telling you he was too extreme, but now somehow or another you're believing their analysis when they're telling you he's too soft. It's idiotic. Now look, disagree all you want, but don't disagree by the definitions and terms of your enemy. Don't allow them to define your terms. Don't allow them to define your battlefield. Don't allow them to hand you your arguments or your analysis. And we're seeing the same thing. Alan West today, and I love Alan West. Alan West today put up a big thing. There's a big thing on Facebook about him being concerned about Jared Kushner and about Steve Bannon's role and these things. And look, I love Bannon. I think Bannon's the best thing that ever happened to Donald Trump. But Bannon, if it turned out that Bannon can't handle the fact that Trump is going to make deals and that there's going to be some compromise, then maybe Bannon's role has to fade. If he can't figure out a way to govern, then he's got to fade. But I don't think that's what's happening. Here's the thing, Alan West has this long panicked issue, and it's all based on reporting coming out of the Free Beacon. It's all based on, it's so astonishing that people will not believe biased sources and anonymous inside sources when they tell them things they don't want to believe. But somehow or another, these sources gain incredible credibility when they tell you things that do speak to your fear. Look, a source is either credible or it is not. And if you're going to have a healthy dose of skepticism in one direction, you'd better have it in all the directions. Otherwise, you're no different than anybody else in an echo chamber. You just happen to have an echo chamber that coincided with reality for a while. And as soon as reality diverges, you're going to be as confused as anyone else. Donald J. Trump is a right-sided moderate who will make concessions where necessary within his ethics to follow his principles. The principles are what's best for America on trade, what's best for America on security, keeping the threats across the world down with a minimum number of U.S. interventions. Not zero. He never said zero, never promised zero. Minimum number of military interventions. But some of them will be required. We're going to talk again about the Syria bombing. We're not going to get into that right now. We're already at, 12 minutes for this vlog. And I think that's about the right size. Anyway, I just wanted to talk to you guys about sort of the concern trolling and the panic you're feeling and what you're really concerned about. Again, it's not that I don't want you to have a different opinion. I'm not telling you to shut up. I'm not even telling you not to argue where the left can see. Screw them. I'm not even telling you to have our disagreements in private. I'm just saying I need you to think about the disagreements you're having. And if you say one thing and I argue with you, or I tell you you're wrong, I'm not going to be shut down by you going, oh, you just want me to blindly follow everything Donald Trump tells you. Screw that noise too. Just like you get to disagree without being some weirdo traitor, I get to agree without being a lapdog. And I'll toss you in the same pile I tossed every lefty who told me I was a mindless follower without knowing what's going on. Anyway, that's what's going on. Now, on the other hand, what is interesting is that though we are possibly losing the support of some of the more inflexible members of the far right, as Donald Trump turns out not to be crazy, as Donald Trump turns out not to be Hitler reincarnated and the worst aspects of his policies as the left had tried to paint them, moderate support is growing by leaps and bounds. And it's going to do that. It's going to go that way. Look at what Donald Trump is going to accomplish with healthcare. You'll be astonished. And all it cost him was what? One bill that didn't pass, and then saying he was going to turn his attention to something else, and everybody getting together behind him to try and make healthcare work, and then he's going to reluctantly come back to healthcare because everybody asked him to, and he's going to get everything he wanted. And you guys are going to have flipped out for nothing. Oh well. We'll see how it goes. I hope you guys enjoy the vlog. Feel free to leave a note in the comments. As always, go follow Herd Watching, HERDWATCHING. You can get me at herdwatching.com. On social media, also follow Riding Herd, RIDINGHERD. I post a lot of stuff every day, stream of consciousness. Herd Watching is pretty much just for articles and long-form vlogs. Pass this along to your friends. Tell everybody else what's going on. And I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.